So that $3 trillion budget now on its way to the US Congress. For more on Obama's plan, let's go now to our Washington correspondent Wu Hanying, who's standing by live. Hanying, thanks for joining us once again. Now, the US president has vowed to cut the federal deficit in half by the end of his first term in office, and that would reduce the $1.3 trillion deficit to about $533 billion, a target date in 2013. Now, what did the president propose exactly in his plan, and where exactly is that money going to come from?
Well, James, here I get the 140-page summary of the budget for fiscal year 2010, which is received by Congress this morning. The plan calls for spending $3.55 trillion in fiscal 2010 and makes changes to increase the spending this year to $3.9 billion. The money comes from federal taxes. Thus, the plan would increase the range of taxes. Couples earning more than $250,000 will see the top tax rate rise 39.6% by 2011. Other changes include new taxes on offshore drilling and expansions of existing tax credits for college students and the child tax credit. James?
Well, you've got 140 pages right in front of you. I'm sure you haven't read through all of it just yet, but what are some of the big budget items in that plan?
Yes, firstly, the help to the banks. Congress already has authorized more than $700 billion to help the financial system, and more have been expected. So this plan could increase the aid to an additional $750 billion. Another major initiative is healthcare, of course. The administration wants to create a $634 billion fund to begin overhauling healthcare and bring care to the more than 47 million people in the U.S. who are uninsured. Funding would come from new taxes on the rich, new insurance regulation, and some tax crackdown. James?
Now, the war in Iraq, we keep forgetting, but it's cost the US a lot of money, and Obama plans to scale back expenditure in Iraq as one way to trim that deficit, but he's also sending another 1,700 troops into Afghanistan. What changes will the budget bring to US military spending as a whole?
Well, for the first time, costs associated with the war are put into the budget. It brings in an annual $140 billion into the document. As the war winds down, so do the projected costs to about $50 billion after 2010, when the bulk of U.S. forces are expected to leave Iraq. It's a breakdown of the items in the budget. $75.5 billion in spending on Iraq and Afghanistan for the remainder of this year, $130 billion in spending on Iraq and Afghanistan for fiscal year 2010, and $533 billion for Department of Defense. James?
Well, the war has been one of Obama's big priorities, but also let's talk about the environment, because his budget also includes hundreds of billions of dollars in revenue from a greenhouse gas emissions trading system. Now, this revenue will be spread out over many years, starting in 2012, to help fight climate change by capping emissions of greenhouse gases. Does this mean there's going to be a more environmentally friendly tone coming out of Washington, which is one of the top greenhouse gas emitters in the world and is also not a member of the Kyoto Protocol?
Well, yes, about global warming, the plan calls for at least $75 billion in revenues by 2012 from a so-called cap-and-trade system that requires companies to buy credits if they exceed greenhouse gas limits. During his speech to the Congress today, President Obama has listed energy along with healthcare and education as critical to the nation's economic future. However, acknowledging a problem is not the same as addressing it. A New York Times editorial goes like this: "It has been 4 decades since Richard Nixon urged Congress to free the nation from its dependence on foreign oil, and the country is more dependent as ever. It has been well over a decade since the world's industrialized nations agreed in Kyoto, Japan, to control global warming emissions, and emissions continue to rise. So Mr. Obama is challenging not just the country, but history." Back to you, James.
More detailed, and Obama says a more transparent budget plan ahead. Thanks very much, Wu Hanying, for joining us, and we'll see you again later for more updates on that.